So I was gonna wait a bit longer to really talk about this topic, mostly because I wanted to be fair to a lot of series, even if I have a very personal investment into them. And Saints Row, if you haven't heard, had a reboot announced, and I was trying to be a little more fair to kind of give it a chance because Saints Row 2 is one of my favorite games of all time. It hit the perfect timing for me, especially since GTA 4 to me wasn't that great. Saints Row 2 and, in theory, Saints Row 3 were kind of the things that held it together in that type of game because they are GTA clones in quotes, but they have their own unique style that stands out a lot more in some cases, especially Saints Row 2. And so they announced the overall reboot of the series. It's a reboot. It's not going to be attached to anything previously. And at the end of the day, I was not sold anywhere close on the reboot right away, merely because it was a CGI trailer. Rule one of me hating the game right away is CGI trailer only. Gameplay trailer, then CGI trailer, please. Fix this, stop it, I hate it. But then they, after the CGI trailer, which basically showed how Ubisoft Volition is making their game, or Deep Silver Volition, whatever you want to call it, I really didn't care, and I watched about a couple days later was the gameplay trailer mixed with the CGI-ness and some developer interviews, which could be a good or bad thing, always. And overall, that is a lot better of a trailer, mostly because there's gameplay. The developer interviews are pretty garbage, mostly because they don't understand that you shouldn't list character traits or character moments or anything like that as bullet points in a presentation. But whatever, it was decent. It wasn't overall as great as you would want, especially after the terrible launch of the CGI trailer, but overall, I wasn't too hurt over the gameplay being what it is. It seems like an evolution of 3, to be honest, with some Agents of Mayhem combination. It seems like it's been upgraded, not upgraded as much as it could be, just in a little bit we've been shown, though. Of course, we can't really, foundation an opinion on the game until it comes out, but the problem is you have to sell me the game. And I have not been sold on this game at all, and so I had to go back and I had to kind of look deeply to see if I really wanted to buy this game, because that's what a trailer is for, is do you want to buy this game or not. And me being a Saints Row fan, I even bought 4 at launch, and I've completed 4. Even though 4 isn't that great of an experience to me, I still loved it because it had the Saints Row callbacks. While it was probably a mistake to say that was a decent game, I still think it as such, merely because Saints Row, to me, is a great series. It's had 2, what I like to call pretty good hits, and then 2 wonky hits, that being the first and 4th game. Get Out of Hell is actually better in my opinion, but it's kind of like a DLC thing. It's a weird game. I don't even count it as a full game, so and it's a little weird. But it's been a long time since we've gotten a Saints Row game, so I wanted to kind of have a foundation of thought going into whether I would buy the game, because you're rebooting the series. That means you are changing something drastically. I was a big fan of the old series. I wasn't a big fan of where it was going, but I was a big fan of the old series. So you have to bring something to the table to have me care. Have me, have a point in the game where the old fans matter. And so far, I see 0 of it. There's no old type of style that's there. They're picking the Southwest for some fucking reason as an open world exploration part. Recommendation number 2: Southwest sucks for exploration purposes. There's nothing out here. I understand, yes, there's games such as New Vegas that explore. It was technically the Southwest, but just to save you some trouble, that doesn't mean it's a good thing. You can make a good thing out of it, but it's a lot harder. There's a lot less cities out here, and desert is not as interesting as you think. Okay, that's the end of that. Maybe that's more opinion than it should be, but I've lived here. it's okay for postcards. It's not okay to explore. As a kid who grew up here, trust me, it's not. But when it comes to everything else, the characters seem to be very one-dimensional or just have 2 bullet points, as the developers mentioned. They even say so, considering they only gave us 2 bullet points. And they seem kind of basic. They seem Ubisoft basic, which I say that not as a direct insult to Ubisoft, but just pointing out that Ubisoft does it all the time. And Deep Silver seems to be copying the type of 2-note character development, which, I mean, is kind of been standard in video games for a long time now. It sucks because ultimately it feels like you're playing with basically plastic in what could have been a clay world. And that really sucks. It seems like they understand some of the parts that were really interesting in Saints Row, and then they kind of change it, which I don't mind. I don't honestly mind changes too much. But at the end of the day, it doesn't seem like there's enough changes that matter to me in the case of the gameplay mechanics. It doesn't seem to change into something better or even a sidestep. It seems to have been a step down from everything that's been shown from the 2 trailers. And then there was more news that came out. I think it was just yesterday, August 31st. But after the showcase and after the poor excuse for the reception that the trailers received, and Volition's going, we're not backing down on this, they have announced, and it's not really announced, but with the release of the listing for the Epic Game Store, includes the details of an expansion pass, not pash, but that game version retails for $90 opposed to $60, so it's a $30 expansion pass, and apparently it will have 3 episodes. We don't know what that means yet. We don't know if the game's episodes include a gang being an episode, or if it's a lot smaller than that, or even bigger. It's entirely possible that it could be. My guess, considering this is a part of Deep Silver, it is incredibly small. That's always been the case when it comes to Deep Silver, especially since Saints Row doesn't really format itself well to DLC like that. You could even look at such thing as GTA 5 as an example. Because they're in a similar type of environment or similar type of storytelling, they kind of can't add expansions that readily. Like GTA Online can, because it's a lot more moldable of an environment, but because of the single player storytelling that is going on in single player, GTA 5 kind of can't add the expansion. When it came to Saints Row 4 and 3, they tried to add these like expansions, but ultimately they kind of feel like missing content more than an expansion. But that's mostly because of what they added at the time, and ultimately $30 for that is kind of stupid. 3 episodes, $10 an episode. It must be a huge episode for me to spend $10 on it, but I doubt it. It seems like the tone also in just not only understanding old Saints Row, seems the tone got kind of mistranslated, but the tone in this one doesn't match how I would even come close to a change. I understand we have to be a lot more wary of what we put into video games, mostly because of what has happened in recent years, along with just people's opinions have changed, and you have to kind of account for that. Nothing lasts forever in the current landscape, and I think this is an example of changing something so drastically that it was never going to succeed in the first place. When it comes down to it, Saints Row had this identity as being wacky. It was wacky, it was off the wall, it was kind of like the showboat part of GTA, and in its own little series. Saints Row 2 is hilarious, it's fun, it's engaging, it has great characters, and even Saints Row 1, being that it is the kind of probably the weakest point merely because it doesn't have a lot in it, still has these character moments and still has important stuff going on. And while Saints Row 2 kind of wraps it up and cleans up Saints Row 1's leftovers, it still had enough to have leftovers. And with Saints Row 3 kind of being a soft reboot, I won't say it's a full reboot, but being a soft reboot with what it did, it definitely seems like this reboot's going to be a lot weaker than Saints Row 3, which is not what I want. I preferred Saints Row 2, and going into Saints Row 3, it was definitely not a step up. It was more of a sidestep with a difference of opinion. I thought it was worse, but that's ultimately just how I felt about it. I do see it as a sidestep in game quality, but at the end of the day, for me, my personal investment, it was a step down. And Saints Row 4 was a giant step down. But when it comes to this, I don't even see a sidestep in it. I see a giant step down from what it was. It seems we are past the point of being able to change it to, especially since it comes out in, 6 months? February, I think it comes out. Which is a terrible month to put this in, but I don't know. I feel this is ultimately going to be a very weak entry in the Saints Row series. It really sucks because I'm such a fan of it, and I always felt it was underrated, but apparently it'll be rated just well enough at this point if they're going to continue with this. I recommend that you do pick up the Saints Row series at one point. Heck, recommendation, instead of buying Saints Row the reboot for $60 on February, you go and pick up an old copy. Maybe you have an Xbox 360 around. Don't buy the PC version, please. PC version's awful for Saints Row 2. It's goddamn miserable. But you can get the Saints Row 1 and 2 for pretty cheap, probably like at most $7-10. So you can actually enjoy two decent games. One of them's really clunky, the other one's really fun. And heck, you can pick up Saints Row 3 Remastered, and heck, pick up 4. I'm sure it'll be about the same as this one. So, yeah, that's kind of my opinion on it. I'm not getting this game. Unless something comes out about this, another trailer, or more news, or anything, I've sold myself on not buying this game. Which is kind of amazing considering I've been a longtime fan since Saints Row 2 came out. I bought Saints Row 2 on release along with the first game. I didn't even know what Saints Row was when I bought it at release. I just bought it as a little bit of a joke because it has a cool ass cover, or at least I thought so. And to lose someone who was willing to buy 3 and 4 and get out of hell at launch, even though I didn't like where the series was heading, that's sad. That's just sad. And I hope at one point that Deep Silver Volition realizes what a problem it is. But, I don't know. If you're a fan, the best thing you could do is not buy this game. That's my opinion.